So I've got a bit of colour because I've been in the garden. I was in the garden most of yesterday, and I worked last night. So it's sort of 24 hours without, 22 hours without sleep, which is unusual for me, really. My sleeping pattern is all over the place normally with this job. Um, so my body doesn't know whether it's coming or going, and I've got quite used to switching from days to nights, and just sort of holding myself in a kind of neutral zone for the time that I'm awake. Sort of partially resting all the time. Um, but yeah, so it was nice to get out in the sun. It seems to be very rarely that both the sun is present and I'm actually available to make use of it. I'm normally working or asleep. So that was good. I feel energized by that. It's probably why I'm still reasonably kind of conscious at the moment instead of immediately heading for bed, which is where I'm talking from, but that's just because it's comfortable and it's a kind of safe space, I guess, for this to develop. Yeah, so I'm on holiday. Great. And I've got a few things lined up. My mother's brother died a while ago, beginning of the year, and so he's got a house down in Cornwall, which is it's a bit of a mess, really. He was a hoarder. He was a single man through his life. He's older than my mother, and collected all sorts of stuff, radios and films and recordings and everything, basically, stamps, loads and loads of rubbish, really. It was, and it's just something I see all over the place. I don't think it's uncommon hoarding. So I've I felt obliged to kind of take responsibility for some items in order to try and get the house emptied out without just throwing them away. So I've got this kind of mess in my room at the moment where I've got some things which I'm waiting to sell. It's just like the seed of that illness. But I don't. Luckily, as if you followed me, you'd be aware. I have periodic clear outs and everything goes. Basically, I just start again, which is refreshing. It's not daunting at all because it's motivated by a real desire for refreshment, and it's a kind of, in a sense, it's a metamorphosis. It's a complete shedding of one phase and moving on to the next, whatever that is. It's not a development because it's often not an improvement, but it is. I'm tired, so now I've completely lost the thread of what I was talking about just in that moment. Um, this normally happens when I'm talking to my mother because my mother has a way of distracting me, even without talking. She just kind of somehow connects to me, and I completely lose the thread of what I'm doing. So she's under instruction to be, if I'm kind of in this mode, to be absolutely, you know, uh, unengaging with me, and basically just keep her mouth shut. That's how I treat my poor mother. I'm not nasty, of course, but you know, it's and here I am rambling as well. This is probably because I'm tired. But anyway, so getting back to this stuff about hoarding, um, you know, I just I seem to have well, I guess it's not just people who are hoarders, it's people who are odd. I have some sort of a magnetic quality to people who are slightly odd, in that they often feel comfortable approaching me, and quite right, because I don't have any prejudgment about anybody really. I mean, I probably make an instantaneous judgment about people, um, which I trust. But and often people who are kind of on the outside of society, uh, you know, they probably have a sort of level of independent thought, sanity, that is not common, and they're probably more interesting on the whole than people who just toe the line. God, I'm really rambling here. This is the normal me. Just kind of, I've got nothing to say. But I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to stick with this um, hoarding business, because I think, you know, it's kind of what people do more generally, is that they cling on to modes, if not things, and you know, they're kind of fearful of what would happen if they let go. And of course, that's a reality. The reality is that, you know, if you have a collection of spoons and then you let your collection of spoons go, the moment you've done it, you're going to find you need a spoon. That's the way it goes. But the trick is, I guess, if there is a trick, to accept that that's going to happen, and to recognize that you're going to be disadvantaged by the loss of these things that your rational mind says ought to be kept, and just lose them anyway. Shake it up a bit and see where that goes. There is no doubt that people who are engaged in hoarding practices suffer. They're burdened by it. It is not supportive of them, even though rationality says this, and this will prove necessary to support them in their requirements. So the requirements need to change, maybe. But the kind of the little point that's in there that I'm trying to make, I think, is that the rational mind can be a prison, and it shouldn't be taken too seriously. I think that irrational behaviour that's rooted in self-preservation, which it needs to be, not just random madness, but it needs to be directed sort of with a view to formulate a new position, really, a metamorphosis, a refreshment, something which is going to lighten your load. give you a freedom, some fresh air, maybe. It's like going on holiday. It's a complete change. Everything changes. Sure, you take your luggage along with the basic things that hold you grounded, that remind you of who you are, that reflect who you are to others. The bag of clothes and bits and bobs. But you know, I guess holiday would be even more refreshing if you just didn't take anything at all but some money to be able to make a transformation instead of just being naked and cold and hungry, which is would be miserable, and nobody really would want to do that, I imagine. Maybe there's some short-term benefit in that. Maybe that's a way forward. I don't know. It's not something that I fancy myself. You know, I'd sooner just try a different food to what I'm used to, and to kind of try on different clothes. Um, yeah. So that there you go. Very loose. Nothing much in it really. It's pretty obvious. Um, just maybe concerned with um, not taking rational thought and logic and facts um, too seriously. Take freedom seriously. Freedom seems to be very important to me. It seems in myself, I would say, I'd recognise it as the most valuable of my possessions, and I would want to keep that. I think this is probably why have trouble forming relationships, is because, you know, the or allowing myself to sort of be put forward into a situation where a relationship might happen, you know, and that I need my freedom, or I feel that I need my freedom, and relationships necessarily are a kind of a joint freedom. That's my excuse. But my 15 minutes are coming up now, so Heather, you know that I think I'm going to leave leave it there. You know, I wouldn't take that too seriously. Okay, we'll do this again. I'll be more lucid perhaps next time. Okay, bye.